Alex Volkanovski is considered one of the most talented fighters on the planet and has enjoyed his time being number one on the pound for pound list. He's arguably the greatest featherweight ever and is also the longest reigning champion currently. In spite of this, Ilia Topuria claims that his fight with Volk will be a walk in the park for him and has even dropped a bold first round KO prediction. Topuria is for sure an incredibly skilled fighter, but these predictions almost seem ludicrous. Claiming to KO the featherweight GOAT in one round after not being able to finish Josh Emmett in 5 does seem a little silly. However, he's a talented, exciting fighter, so it's only fair to hear him out. Is Topuria just another loudmouth that's going to be humbled by the champ, or is he going to capitalise on Volkanovski coming off a nasty KO loss and possibly not giving himself enough time to recover? Ilia started MMA as a jiu-jitsu guy, something that even the commentary team seemed to forget at times. The majority of his wins pre-UFC are submission wins, and it wasn't until he was already in the UFC where he started blasting people with right hands. It's hard to imagine modern day Topuria having jiu-jitsu origins, however he still does show his grappling sometimes. From the outside looking in, it appears Topuria has fallen in love with boxing, and as a result has shifted his style to become a boxer with some sneaky grappling techniques. He uses a lot of shoulder rolls, which is something commonly seen in boxing but is far rarer in MMA. He's great at using it to get away from the right hand, which you can see a whole lot of in his fight with Josh Emmett, with around 90% of Emmett's strikes being right overhands. He also likes to pull counter the right hand, although he appears to be more comfortable using shoulder rolls to defend. Pretty much all of Topuria's offense consists of right hands and left hooks, often in succession to each other. He pumps out single jabs, but not as often as I think he should, and like pretty much everyone, will throw some leg kicks every now and then. His speed and power give a lot of people trouble. For someone who didn't come from striking, he's very good at getting his whole body weight into punches in a very short space of time. We don't see much of his grappling nowadays, however the little bits we do see show a very strong, opportunistic grappler. He saw an opening while battering Bryce Mitchell for the head and arm choke, and shot an intelligent takedown after getting a bit wobbled to secure all 5 rounds against Emmett. Topuria does do some wicked stuff, and he's definitely a fun watch. However, due to his recent comments and predictions, I have to conclude that he is being overconfident. Starting with the obvious, Alexander Volkanovski is probably top 3 best fighters in the world, probably the best featherweight to ever do it, and in my opinion, one of the best fighters we've ever seen. Ilia Topuria, while clearly a talented guy, his best win is Josh Emmett. Upon rewatching some of his fights, I have found a couple things that do concern me, and I'm sure if I was able to spot them, Volk and his team for sure will have. As I said earlier, Topuria has adopted a boxing-heavy approach to his fights, and that comes with the same drawbacks as when anyone else does it, namely the leg kicks. Topuria likes to stand pretty heavy on his front leg, mainly because it helps him move and punch the way a boxer would. This leaves the front leg quite vulnerable to leg kicks, and it makes picking up the leg to check kicks pretty much an unusable tactic. Topuria isn't clueless to this though, and in his fight with Emmett, would often step into the punch when he saw Emmett swing to kick. The trouble is with Volkanovski is that he's a lot more tricky with low kicks, and he'll kick from both legs. Volkanovski will use feints and retreats to put his opponents heavy on their front leg, and will kick the leg when it's got the most weight on it, aka when it's the most damaging. He also does this thing that I love, where he'll throw a switch kick and land in the opposite stance by putting the kicking leg behind them. This invites his opponent to step in, which is when he fires off a nasty lead hook. He did this 2 or 3 times against Rodriguez, which is what ended up hurting him and finishing the fight. It could be real bad if Topuria ends up stepping into a heavy lead hook off Volkanovski's kick, which it would be Volkanovski's right hand, which is his strong hand because of when he kicks, he falls back into the other stance. The other thing about having a boxing heavy approach is that it leaves you open to head kicks, although Volkanovski's really not much of a head kicker, partially because he's short, but also just because he doesn't really do it, so I'm not really going to go over it. Ilia has a really nice shoulder roll, and is very hard to hit with right hands, although he doesn't appear to have the same slickness with defending left hands. I really noticed this a lot in the Emmett fight, and it's definitely my biggest concern with this upcoming fight with Volkanovski. Traditionally, shoulder rolling involves tucking your chin behind your left shoulder if you're orthodox, and then using that shoulder to deflect right hands. This means you don't need your jab hand held up high at all times, and you can have a bit more fluidity with the jab hand. In spite of this, Topuria doesn't actually jab much, and when he does jab, it's only single jabs, and it is something that I would like to see more out of him. So yeah, you use your shoulder to deflect the right hands, and then you basically use your right hand, so your power hand, to parry jabs. And then this is the part of the shoulder roll where Topuria really doesn't do. With all due respect to Josh Emmett, he's not a very technical striker, and basically all he does revolves around his big overhand. But even his jabs and his lead hooks were getting through, and especially when they're in exchange, Topuria drops his hands a lot, and it really does leave him open for a short left hook. It took him a bit too long to notice it, but when Josh Emmett realised that Topuria was open to a big left hand, he did it almost straight away in the 5th round, and that was his best moment in the entire fight. Topuria hasn't really fought any southpaws recently, at least, but it would be interesting to see how he deals with left hands from southpaws, because obviously that's their power hand, and that's the one he should be worried about the most. Volkanovski isn't really much of a jabber or a hooker, but he is a massive feinter, and he can definitely use that to set up left hands. For instance, he could feint the right hand, kind of trigger that shoulder roll that Topuria does, and then set up a left hook. I think that's definitely something he can do. In spite of being short, Volkanovski also has a long reach, so he could definitely do things with a jab. He could use a jab to he could flick it into Topuria's face, and then use it to set up leg kicks, without the risk of Topuria stepping in on the leg kicks. But the main thing is that Topuria, he's great at defending right hands, but really doesn't have the same success with left hands, because he's missing that part of the shoulder roll, the Philly shell, whatever you want to call it, where he does the great shoulder roll, but then doesn't parry the jabs or defend against the left hooks with his right hand. It's at its worst when he's in an exchange, because he'll throw a right hand and then he won't put it back to his chin, which leaves him completely open. And Josh Emmett, when they were just exchanging punches, he was landing left hands almost over and over on Topuria because he didn't have his hand up. And if Josh Emmett can do it, then Alex Volkanovski, of course, can do it. Volkanovski is a very intelligent fighter, and he's got a very intelligent team behind him, and I do think he's going to make use of the jab, and I do think he's going to use feints to set up powerful left hooks that are really going to give Topuria trouble. So my prediction for this fight, I do think Topuria is being overconfident, and I do think Alex Volkanovski is going to win. I have a bit of a weirdly specific prediction where I think Volkanovski is going to finish Topuria, but then Topuria is going to complain about the stoppage in spite of it not being a bad stoppage. I don't know why, but I just have a feeling that's going to happen. Topuria might go for takedowns, but I don't think they're going to work on Volkanovski, especially if Islam Makhachev has trouble taking Volkanovski down. Topuria is as well. It is a little bit concerning that Volkanovski got knocked out back in October, which wasn't that long ago. However, I do think he's going to see the right hands from Topuria coming, even though they are quick and they are powerful. I think that he's smart enough and he's experienced enough to be able to evade them, and I think he's going to be able to set up his own jabs, his left hooks, and then I think he's going to use his hands to set up leg kicks, which I think are really going to give Topuria problems because he is so heavy on his front leg. So yeah, that's my prediction. If this video felt a bit rushed, it was because I was ill, and when you're ill, it's hard to do things. But anyways, thank you for watching my video. If you have any predictions of your own, leave a comment, and thank you for watching.